Today, we're talking about caregiving, what you need to know, what the system gets wrong, and why it's becoming harder and harder to find quality caregivers. For those who don't know, I rely on caregivers every day for essential tasks like getting out of bed, dressing, cooking, and even attending my doctor's appointments. I receive care through Florida's Medicaid Waiver, which is supposed to help people with disabilities get the support they need to live independently. But the reality is far from ideal. We're going to break down the Medicaid waiver system and how it works in Florida, since that's where I live, and what caregivers are expected to do versus how much they're actually paid, the frustrating amount of paperwork involved, and why so many caregivers are leaving the field. Plus, I'll be sharing my own personal experiences fighting for enough care and hours and the constant fear of losing access to Medicaid, Medicare, and the Medicaid waiver altogether. This episode is going to be eye-opening, especially for anyone who does not rely on caregivers. And for those who do, whether you're a caregiver yourself, someone receiving care, or a family member, I see you. I know your struggles, and I know how hard this system makes it for all of us. Let's get into it. The Medicaid waiver, what it covers and what it doesn't. The Medicaid waiver is supposed to cover the cost of in-home care, allowing people with disabilities and chronic conditions to live independently instead of being forced into nursing homes or institutions. In theory, that sounds great, but here's the problem. It rarely covers things that we actually need. In Florida, caregivers who work under the Medicaid waiver are typically paid between $15 to $16 an hour. Some states are less than that. Can you believe that? For Florida, that might sound decent until you realize what they're actually responsible for. Private home health agencies usually charge $30 to $40 an hour for similar services, but under Medicaid, caregivers are expected to do everything for almost half the pay. The waiver is supposed to provide enough hours to meet a person's needs, but the state limits how many hours are approved. Even when a person requires 24-hour care, they may only get up to 8 to 12 hours of care approved. That leaves huge gaps in care, forcing family members to step in, or worse, leaving the person without support that they need. I had a friend that was living in Palm Beach County, attending FAU, trying to get her bachelor's degree. Her caregivers wouldn't show up and get her out of bed, and it got to the point where she missed class so much that she ended up failing, and she wasn't allowed to finish her degree. And to this day, she doesn't have a bachelor's degree. That sucks. For people like me, all of this is dangerous. If I don't have a caregiver available, I can't just wait to get out of bed. I can't go without eating or using the bathroom. But that's the reality we face when hours aren't approved or caregivers leave because the pay isn't worth the workload. So, who qualifies for the Medicaid waiver? The Medicaid waiver is specific about who qualifies for services. In Florida, it only covers individuals with the following disabilities: cerebral palsy, spina bifida, intellectual disabilities, for example, Down syndrome, Prader-Willi syndrome, autism, and Phelan-McDermott syndrome. If you don't have one of these diagnoses, you don't qualify for waiver services, even if you have a disability that makes daily life just as difficult. I have a friend who also has myasthenia gravis, or MG. This is a neuromuscular disease that causes severe muscle weakness. If his wife ever needed help caring for him, he wouldn't qualify for the Medicaid waiver. That means if his condition ever worsens to the point where he needs in-home care, he wouldn't get the same assistance I do. This is a serious flaw in the system, The waiver is supposed to help people with disabilities stay out of institutions. Yet, it excludes many people with progressive severe conditions simply because their diagnosis is not on the list. This isn't just about paperwork. This is about people's lives. People with disabilities deserve the right to receive care at home, regardless of the name of their diagnosis. What caregivers are expected to do. Caregivers are not just personal assistants. They take up multiple roles. Nurses, housekeepers, cooks, transportation providers, and medical advocates. Here's what the job actually looks like. Activities of daily living, otherwise known as ADLs. This includes getting me out of bed, helping me shower, helping me dress, helping me go to the bathroom, and mobility support. Errands and transportation, grocery shopping, picking up prescriptions, taking me to doctor's appointments, and sometimes waiting with me during those appointments. Helping me track medications, making sure I follow therapy and exercise routines. Emotional support. Caregivers aren't just workers, they become part of our lives. They listen to our frustrations and advocate for us. Sometimes they are our voice in medical settings. Now, imagine doing all of that for $16 an hour or $15, with no benefits, no paid time off, and no job security. It's no surprise that people don't want to do this work. The fight for hours. Even when you do have a decent caregiver, getting enough hours approved is another battle. The state constantly tries to cut hours, even when there's a clear medical necessity. Right now, I'm fighting the state to try to get 16 hours of care per day. But my support coordinator is telling me that I'll be lucky to get 12. For someone who is somewhat independent but still requires a lot of help, I need every bit of the hours I'm requesting. But instead, right now, I'm only being given 8 hours a day. And it's simply not enough to do everything I need, including trying to work from home. I need to be able to stand up at my computer to work on this very podcast that you're listening to right now. But there are days when I don't even have enough hours of care to make that possible. Sometimes I'm forced to get into bed before I'm ready simply because there isn't anyone available to help me. Other times, I'm left sitting in my wheelchair all day long, waiting for someone to come back, and that causes me intense pain. Recently, I was stuck in my chair for so long that by the time I finally went to bed, I couldn't move. That's not just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. This is the reality of what happens when the state denies people the care and hours that they need. It forces people with disabilities into impossible situations where we either go without care or suffer physically because of the lack of support. What next for people like me? The uncertain future of Medicaid and Medicare. I've already talked about the possibility of losing Medicaid waivers and Medicare depending on what decisions are made at the federal level in another episode, which I can link at the end of this episode. If these programs are cut, thousands of people, including myself, will lose life-sustaining care. I rely on the Medicaid waiver, but I also know how fragile the system is. One decision from lawmakers could make everything go away, and people like me would be left with nowhere to turn. That's why we have to fight. Caregivers deserve better pay. People with disabilities deserve enough care hours to meet their needs, and Medicaid should be expanding services, not cutting them. The reality is the system is broken. If we don't advocate for change, nothing will improve. If you're listening to this and you're frustrated by the system, whether you're a caregiver, a person with a disability, or a family member, know that you're not alone. We need to push for better wages, better funding, and a system that actually works for the people who rely on it. If this episode resonated with you, please share it The more awareness we bring to this issue, the better chance of creating real change. As my friend Jamie used to say, dreams and dedication are a powerful combination. Until next time, take care and keep advocating for yourself and others.